Hello, welcome back to our kitchen. As you can see, we have quite a few apples to deal with and some tomatoes that we'll get to later. But thankfully, we were gifted quite a few apples from a local apple tree. I don't know what kind they are, but they're pretty sweet. So we're going to make applesauce and then we're going to can it. I am just using this cheap Walmart apple slicer. It doesn't work amazing. I'm sure there's better models out there, but it works still a little better than cutting everything by hand. But for the really small ones, I do just cut them up by hand. So these have all been rinsed and I'm not gonna worry about the peels. And so I just slice them up, cut off the bad spots, and then they go into this bowl. You can use the Ball Fresh Produce Protector, but if you're worried about color or the discoloration, but I'm not really worried about it, so I'm not, but so that's an option if that's what you would like to use. So just check them all, make sure I don't have any seeds in there, and then pop them off. Yeah. Right. So here I have one that got a little bit of pour in it, so I'll just take my knife and turn that off. So I got them all sliced up. We got a nice bucket of scraps to go to the chickens. And as you can see, they're starting to get brown like apples do. But it's not a big deal. But again, you can prevent that if you want. So the next thing I will do is put them in a pot with water to cook on the stove for a while. So I got about just over 11 pounds of apples in this pot. And for like 7.5 to 10.5 pounds of apples, you want 1 to 1.5 cups of water. So I'm gonna put about 2 cups. We kind of like a little looser in applesauce. Depending on how it cooks, I'll see how it is later, but I may add a little bit more water even. So got about 2 cups of water here. And now I will put this on the stove. Okay, we got the apples on the stove. I'm gonna put it on about medium heat. And you'll wanna make sure to stir it every once in a while so it doesn't stick. Brought the apple scraps out for the chickens. Once it starts breaking down, or boiling first and then breaking down, I turn the heat down. I've got mine on about 3 on my stove. And as it breaks down more, I will eventually just put it on low to help prevent any burning. So it's been on the stove for just over an hour and a half. And you can see it's really broken down and getting mushy. I need it really soft to go through my KitchenAid vegetable or fruit and vegetable strainer. So that's why I'm cooking it so long. So kind of depends what you are using to puree your applesauce on how long you want to cook it and how soft you want to get it. Hello again. I was working on the apples last night and it was just getting late. I wasn't going to finish them. So once they got soft enough cooking on the stove, I just put them in the fridge. And so I'm going to take them out and I'm going to be using my KitchenAid to puree them. So I have the KitchenAid fruit and vegetable strainer. To use this, you also have to have the food grinder attachment. So if I remember right, There's 2 models of this food grinder, and it only works with this model. So if you have a KitchenAid and you're wanting to puree foods, this is what I use to puree all my tomatoes with, to separate the skins. So if you're wanting to use it, just know that you have to have both of these to be able to use the fruit and vegetable strainer. So I'm going to get the apples out and we're gonna run them through this. So as I was going to attach the attachments here, I see that the little screw that goes right here on a KitchenAid is missing because someone likes to play with it, and I obviously wasn't watching very close, and I don't know where that screw is. So plans may change. I'm going to go look around the house and see if I can't find it anywhere, but she can't exactly tell me where it is right now. So stay tuned. Well, I looked in every drawer and cabinet I could think of that she plays in, and underneath all the couches and stuff, and I was not able to find it. So thankfully it's not an expensive part to replace, but that means I will have to use something else today. I have this little Ninja chopper blender thing. So it's gonna take quite a few batches because I have this bowl, which is about full, and it's a gallon bowl. And this pot is a 12-quart pot, and it's a little over half full. So this is what I'll be doing, I guess. And that's not quite as efficient, but that's okay. So I will just take this and put it in here and run it batch by batch and put it in another bowl until it's all blended, and then it'll go back on the stove. Whoops. Let's see. Well, try this out. Yeah, well, it's not perfect. It's gonna be a little bit more of a textured or chunky applesauce, but that is okay. We'll just try cooking it down a long ways to help it soften. Just do this batch by batch, I guess. If you have an electric food mixer or a food mill, those would work much more efficiently, but use what you have. It might take a little longer, but you can still make applesauce. So this is what it looks like after I cooked it all down. So it's already kind of starting, it was already starting to get, you know, mushy, more applesauce textured. And after I ran it through this is what it is looking like. So it's not gonna be completely smooth, but it'll be good enough. You can see, this is a 12-quart pot. And I need to clean the sides of it. Use the applesauce on the side, but it's like almost full. I did 2 batches. So the one I showed had like 11 pounds of apples, and I did a batch earlier that had like 8 pounds, so, or 7 or 8 pounds. So we've got about 18, 19 pounds of apples. So I am probably gonna add in like 4 cups of sugar. For a batch of 7.5 to 10.5 pounds, you can add like 1.5 cups to 2 cups or something like that. Just depending on how sweet your apples are. It doesn't have anything to do with the safety of canning them. These are sweet, but they're not one of the sweetest varieties. And we probably prefer a little sweeter of applesauce. So I'm gonna start with maybe 4 and then taste it and see how it is. And then I might add a little bit more. And then once I start getting it boiling, yeah, I will add some cinnamon at the end. So I've got my water bath canner heating up. I am going to put this on the stove and get it warm and boiling. Okay, thank you. And then I'm gonna get my jars ready, get them in hot water and clean and ready to go. So. One thing that you want to make sure to do is stir quite often. Applesauce will boil and kind of pop, and it can really make a mess. So, and you don't want, obviously, you want to prevent sticking and scorching, because that would be a real bummer. So, just keep it on a lower heat and make sure to stir. Or if you want a higher heat, just really make sure to watch it and stir. To get it until it starts boiling. Our hot water, or our water from our sink is pretty hot, and so I'll just put a splash of soap in there and put everything in there, and just make sure it's clean. And I will leave them in the hot water until they are ready to be filled, and I'll just give them a good rinse before I take them. I did add a little more water. You know, it's pretty thick, and even after I added the water, but we like a little bit of a run here, applesauce, and so I added a little bit more water. So just know you can do that. So as you can see, it looks, bubbles are forming. It looks like it's kind of starting to boil, and it has been doing this for quite a while. And you'll definitely want to be stirring basically constantly, or at least mine is a very thick applesauce, so that's even more important. But when I check the temperature, it is supposed to get up to 212, and it is still only at like 170. So even if it is still boiling, like you can see. So just be aware of that. A food thermometer is very helpful when it comes to this, because I would have maybe guessed it's considered boiling, but it is not quite yet. Okay, that took a lot longer than I was anticipating with this big of a pot, I guess. So it finally got to boiling, and now I am going to fill my jars. You really want to try to keep it as hot as you can, so I'll put the lid on as I'm grabbing more jars. But going to fill and keep a 1/2 inch headspace. I'll check it with this thing. It's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this and go down on the sides of the jar and just push in to let any of the air come up top. Especially with the thicker applesauce, you don't want to, stir it a lot to try to get, or really ever, but to get air to come out, because it would really just incorporate more air. So I will do this with the rest of the jars. Now I've got a paper towel that I wetted a corner, and I'm going to wipe all the rims just to make sure there's no applesauce on it, to ensure we get a proper seal. That is my daughter, in case you were wondering. Now I put the lids on, and just depending on what kind of lids you're using, can determine how you do them. It's no longer required to, at least for the ball lids, to have them in boiling water before you put them on, but I just had them in my hot soapy water. Now I'll put all the rims on. No. Usually grab a towel, but my daughter has ran off with them. So I would just tighten these finger tight. You don't want them so tight that they buckle while they're in the canner, but you can get them pretty tight. Okay, I've got the rack and my canner up, so I will set all of the jars in. I couldn't remember how many jars I could fit in there, but these smooth-sided jars I can fit one more in. Okay, all are in. Now I'll put the lid back on to bring it back up to a boil. And once it starts boiling, I will start timing. So here is the chart to help you determine how much you need to increase your processing time based on your altitude. So we live just over 2,000 feet, so I'll only have to increase mine 5 minutes, but just be aware of this when you are canning. Okay, we have a rolling boil, so we will start the time. We've got to do 25 minutes. C is for cow. Going moo, moo. Stroke her moo. No. D is for duck and fluffy and sweet. Some little feathers and little whoopsie. Duck, duck. This is for sheep. Bah, bah. The 25 minutes is up. So turn the heat off, take the lid off, and I'll let it sit for 5 minutes, and then I'll take them out. Well, that wraps up the first batch of applesauce. I have plenty more to do, but that should give you enough to start start doing it yourself. So good luck, and if you try it, let me know in the comments. Oakland and I decided to pause canning applesauce to go ride in the tractor with Caleb as he was running the grain cart to help harvest corn. So that's what we did the rest of the night and picked up canning the next day.